My 13-year-old daughter came home from summer camp with a photograph of me holding a newborn baby. There were only 3 problems. I'd never seen the photograph before. I'd never been to the cabin behind me, and the baby in my arms wasn't my daughter. I stared at the photograph while Sophie stood across the kitchen counter. "Mom?" I couldn't answer. "Is that you?" "Yes." "Then who's the baby?" I turned the photograph over. Someone had written a date on the back. August 18, 2011. My hands went cold because I remembered exactly where I had been that summer. I was 24, newly married, and according to everything I knew about my own life, I had never been pregnant. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 39 years old. My husband Eric and I have one child, Sophie. She's 13. At least that's what I would have told you before she came home from Pine Ridge summer camp. Sophie had been away for 12 days. It was her first overnight camp. She'd spent most of June begging us to let her go because her best friend Madison was attending. I worried. Eric didn't. "She'll be fine," he kept telling me. He was right, mostly. Sophie called twice during camp. She sounded happy. She talked about kayaking, archery, terrible cafeteria pancakes, and a counselor named Ava who apparently knew every Taylor Swift song ever written. Nothing sounded unusual. Then on the final afternoon, I drove 2 hours north to pick her up. The cabin sat beside a lake surrounded by pine trees. Parents were everywhere. Kids were dragging sleeping bags across the parking lot. Counselors were shouting names. Sophie saw me and ran toward the car. For the first 30 minutes home, she talked without stopping. Then she fell asleep. The photograph didn't appear until that evening. I was unpacking her duffel bag when she came into the kitchen carrying an old white envelope. I forgot. Forgot what? This. She placed it on the counter. There was no stamp, no address, only my first name, Natalie. "Where did you get this?" "Someone gave it to me." "Who?" "I don't know." I stopped unpacking. "What do you mean you don't know?" "An old lady." "What old lady?" "She was at camp." "Was she a counselor?" "No." "A parent?" "I don't think so." My voice became more serious. "Sophie, did you tell anyone about this?" She rolled her eyes slightly. "Mom, she wasn't creepy. A stranger gave my 13-year-old daughter an envelope with my name on it. That's creepy. She knew you." That stopped me. "What?" "She said you used to know her." "What's her name?" She wouldn't tell me. Now I was genuinely uncomfortable. What exactly did she say? Sophie thought for a moment. She asked if my mom's name was Natalie Brooks. My married name? Yes. Did she know your name? Yeah. A chill ran across my arms. What else? She asked how old I was. And you told her? 13. What happened then? She looked kind of sad. Sad how? Like she was going to cry. I stared at the envelope. Where were you when this happened? Near Cabin 7. I had no idea what Cabin 7 was. Were your friends with you? No, I was walking back from the lake. Sophie, you should have told a counselor. I know. Then why didn't you? Because she said the envelope belonged to you. I picked it up. It wasn't sealed. Inside was one photograph, nothing else. I pulled it out, and my entire body went still. The photograph showed a young woman sitting on the steps of a wooden cabin. She was wearing jeans and a gray sweatshirt. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked exhausted, but she was smiling. I knew that face, because it was mine, 24-year-old me. In my arms was a newborn baby wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. I sat down. Sophie leaned over the counter. "That's you, right?" "Yes." "Who's the baby?" "I don't know." She laughed because she thought I was joking. Then she saw my face. "Seriously? I've never seen this picture. But you're holding the baby." "I know. Could it be somebody else's kid?" "Maybe." That was the obvious explanation. A friend's baby, a cousin, someone I'd forgotten holding for 5 minutes 13 years ago. Except I recognized the sweatshirt. It had belonged to Eric. He'd given it to me during our first year of marriage, and I remembered throwing it away in 2012 after bleach ruined one sleeve. This photograph was real, at least the clothes were. I turned it over. August 18, 2011. Below the date were 3 handwritten words. You held him. Him. The baby was a boy. "Mom?" I looked at Sophie. "Go show Dad your camp pictures." "What?" "Please." She knew something was wrong, but she left. The moment she was gone, I photographed the front and back of the picture with my phone. Then I called my mother. She answered cheerfully. "Natalie, is Sophie home?" "Yes." "How was camp?" "Mom, where was I in August 2011? Silence. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, but I noticed it. "What kind of question is that?" "Where was I?" "You were living with Eric." "I know. Did we go anywhere?" "I don't remember." "Did I ever go to Pine Ridge?" This time the silence lasted longer. "Pine Ridge? Summer camp?" "No." "You're sure?" "I think so." I looked at the photograph. "Mom, did I ever hold a newborn boy that summer?" She laughed, but it sounded wrong. "Natalie, you've held lots of babies. Not like this." "What does that mean?" Someone gave Sophie a photograph. My mother stopped speaking. "Mom? What photograph?" I described it. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she whispered, "Throw it away." I felt something drop inside my stomach. "What?" "Throw the photograph away." "Why?" "Because it's probably fake. You haven't seen it." "I don't need to." "Mom." "Natalie, listen to me." Her voice had changed. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was fear. "Do not call the camp." That was exactly when I knew I was going to call the camp. "Why?" "Because there's nothing there for you." "What does that mean?" "Please, do you know who the baby is?" She didn't answer. "Mom, I have to go." She hung up. I called back. No answer. Again. Voicemail. My mother had never hung up on me in my life.
Eric was in the backyard when I found him. He was helping Sophie unload her camping equipment. I waited until Sophie went inside. Then I handed him the photograph. "Do you know what this is?" He looked at it, and for half a second something happened to his face. Recognition. Then it disappeared. "No." "You reacted." "I didn't." "You did." "Natalie, I've never seen this." "That's your sweatshirt." He looked again. "I had 100 gray sweatshirts." "No, look at the left pocket." There was a tiny white embroidered letter E. His sister had given it to him for Christmas. He stopped arguing. "Okay. So you're wearing my sweatshirt. Who is the baby?" "I don't know." "Where were we August 18th, 2011? Eric frowned. "I don't remember." "My mother just told me to throw this away." That got his attention. "Why?" She wouldn't say. He turned the photograph over. His expression changed when he read the words. "You held him." Where did Sophie get this? An older woman at camp. Who woman? She doesn't know. We should call them. My mother specifically told me not to. Eric stared at me. Then we're definitely calling them. Pine Ridge's office was still open. A woman named Rebecca answered. I explained that a stranger had approached my daughter. Her tone immediately became serious. "Can you describe the woman?" Sophie said maybe 65 or 70, gray hair, thin. She was wearing a green jacket. Rebecca became quiet. "Hello?" "Yes, I'm here." "Do you know her?" "Possibly." "Who?" "We had a visitor matching that description." "A visitor?" "She came yesterday afternoon." "Why?" "She said she used to work here." "What's her name?" "I'd need to check." "Please." I waited. I could hear keyboard typing. Then Rebecca said, "Eleanor Voss." The name meant nothing to me. "Did she work there?" "Yes." "When?" "Let me see." More typing. "From 1998 until 2012. "What did she do?" "She was the camp nurse." I looked at Eric. "A nurse?" "Yes." "Can you give me her phone number?" "I'm sorry, I can't release personal information." "Can you ask her to contact me?" Rebecca hesitated. "There's something else." "What?" "Your daughter's cabin." "Cabin 7? "Yes." "What about it?" "Eleanor specifically asked to see it." My skin prickled. Why? She said she wanted to see the old building before it was renovated. Did you let her? Yes, one of our staff members walked her there. Was Sophie there? Not at first. What does that mean? Rebecca lowered her voice. According to the counselor, Eleanor saw Sophie coming down the trail, and she asked who she was. I gripped the phone. Then what? The counselor told her Sophie's name, and Eleanor knew who her mother was. Yes. How? I don't know. I looked at the photograph again. Rebecca, was cabin 7 there in 2011? Yes. Was it used for campers? Usually. Usually. There was a period when it wasn't. When? She checked. Summer 2011. My heart started pounding. Why? It was temporarily closed. For repairs? No. What was it used for? I heard the answer in her hesitation before she said it. There was a private medical program operating out of that section of the property. What kind of medical program? I don't have those records. Who would? Maybe Eleanor. I looked at Eric. Can you at least forward my number to her? Yes. I thanked her and hung up. Eric was staring at the photograph. What medical program? I don't know. Then he asked something strange. What month did you have your car accident? I looked at him. What? The accident before we moved. I knew exactly which one he meant. In 2011, I'd been involved in a highway accident. Not serious enough to leave permanent injuries, but serious enough to put me in the hospital. I remember waking up with a concussion. I remember my mother beside me. I remember Eric arriving later, and I remember almost nothing about the week afterwards. At 9:43 that night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered immediately. Hello? A woman's voice said, Natalie? Yes. This is Eleanor Voss. I stood. Eric looked at me. You gave my daughter that photograph. Yes. Who is the baby? Eleanor didn't answer immediately. Where are you? At home. Is your husband there? Yes. Can you speak privately? I looked at Eric. Why? Because what I need to tell you is about what happened before he arrived. My pulse quickened. What happened at Pine Ridge? Eleanor exhaled. You don't remember? No. Nothing? No. She sounded genuinely upset. Oh, Natalie. Tell me. You came to cabin 7 on August 12th, the day after my accident? Yes. Why? Your mother brought you. I closed my eyes. My mother? Yes. Why? She said you couldn't go back to the hospital. What does that mean? You were confused, heavily medicated. Why would a camp nurse be treating me? I wasn't supposed to. Then why did you do it? Because your mother begged me. For what? Eleanor began crying. I've regretted saying yes for 15 years. My throat tightened. What did you do? Before she answered, I heard something downstairs, the front door. Then Sophie's voice. Grandma? My mother had arrived, without calling. I looked through the hallway. She was standing inside my house. She wasn't alone. Beside her was a teenage boy, maybe 14, tall, dark hair. He looked terrified. My mother looked up at me, then at the phone in my hand. Natalie, hang up. I couldn't move. The boy looked strangely familiar, not because I'd met him before, because he had Sophie's eyes, my eyes. Eleanor was still speaking through the phone. Natalie, are you there? I stared at my mother. Who is he? She started crying. The boy looked at me. Then he said, My name is Noah. My mother closed her eyes, and Eleanor whispered through the phone, That's the baby you're holding in the photograph. The week I couldn't remember. The teenage boy standing beside my mother was the baby from the photograph. At least, that was what Eleanor had just told me. But that was impossible. The photograph was dated August 18th, 2011, almost 15 years ago. The boy standing in my hallway looked about 14, maybe 15, and he had my eyes. Mom? Sophie was standing near the kitchen now. She looked from me to the boy, then to my mother. What's going on? Nobody answered. I still had Eleanor on the phone. Natalie? I raised it back to my ear. Don't hang up. My mother heard me. Natalie, please. I looked directly at her. You knew Eleanor called me? No. Then why are you here? She looked at Noah. Because he found me. The boy finally spoke. I wasn't supposed to. His voice was quiet, nervous. My mother reached toward him. He stepped away. That small movement told me immediately he didn't trust her. I turned toward Eric. He was standing behind Sophie. His face was almost as confused as mine. Take Sophie upstairs. Sophie protested. Mom, please. No, that boy looks like me. My stomach tightened. Of course she'd noticed. Children sometimes see the truth faster than adults because they aren't busy trying to explain it away. Sophie, who is he? Noah looked at her. For a moment, the two teenagers simply stared at each other. Same brown-green eyes, same slightly pointed chin, same habit of pressing their lips together when nervous. My mother whispered, Natalie, we need to talk. Yes, but not with the children here. Noah immediately said, I'm staying. My mother looked at Noah. Noah, you told me enough lies. The room went silent. I looked at Sophie. Upstairs, 10 minutes. She didn't move. Please. Finally, she turned and walked upstairs. But I knew my daughter. She wasn't going far. I didn't have the energy to argue. I looked at Noah. You can stay. My mother closed her eyes. Fine. Then I remembered Eleanor. Are you still there? Yes. I'm putting you on speaker. My mother's head snapped toward me. No. I pressed the button. Eleanor's voice filled the room. Natalie? Yes. Is Margaret there? My mother's face went pale. Yes. Eleanor was quiet. Then she said, Margaret, it's time. My mother sat down. She suddenly looked 10 years older. I said, Tell me what happened. My mother started first. You were in an accident. I know. It was worse than you remember. What does that mean? You had a concussion. I know that too. You also had internal bleeding. I stared at her. No. Yes. I would remember surgery. You didn't have surgery. Then what happened? My mother clasped her hands. The doctors stabilized you. Which hospital? St. Matthew's. I knew the name. It had closed 8 years ago. Why did you take me from there? I didn't. Eleanor interrupted. She did. My mother looked toward the phone. Eleanor, no more. I stepped closer to my mother. You removed me from the hospital? She nodded. Against medical advice? Another nod. Why? Her eyes filled. Because they found something. What? She couldn't say it. Eleanor did. You were pregnant. Everything in the room disappeared. Not literally, but that's how it felt. The walls, Eric, my mother, Noah. For 1 second, all I heard was the refrigerator behind me. Then I laughed, a single confused laugh. No. Natalie, no. I looked at my mother. I wasn't pregnant. She started crying. Yes, you were. No, you didn't know. That doesn't make sense. You were almost 7 months. I stared at her. 7 months pregnant and I didn't know? It happens. Not to me. You'd had irregular periods for years. That doesn't explain 7 months. You hadn't gained much weight. Stop. My mother stopped. I put both hands on the counter. Eric looked as stunned as I felt. He whispered, "Margaret, I was married to her." My mother looked at him. "I know. You're saying my wife was 7 months pregnant and neither of us knew?" She didn't answer. Eric stepped forward. "Was the baby mine?" That question hit me differently. I turned toward him. He looked horrified that he had even had to ask. My mother looked at me, then at Eric. "Yes." Eric sat down. Noah didn't move. His eyes were fixed on me. I couldn't look at him for long, not yet. My brain was fighting the idea too hard. I turned toward the phone. "Eleanor, what happened at Cabin 7? She took a breath. "Your mother called me the morning after your accident." "Why you?" "We'd known each other for years." I looked at my mother. "How?" "We went to high school together." Another thing I'd never known. Eleanor continued. "Margaret said you were terrified and confused." "I don't remember being terrified. You weren't processing information normally." "Because of the concussion?" "Partly." "What else?" "The medication." "What medication?" My mother said, "Sedatives." "Why?" "You kept trying to leave the hospital." "To go where?" "Home." "Then why didn't you take me home?" My mother stared at Noah, and I knew we were approaching the part she had spent 15 years hiding.
"Mom," she whispered, "the doctors said the accident had triggered complications with the pregnancy." "What complications?" "Placental bleeding." I felt my knees weaken. "Was the baby dying?" "No." "Was I?" "No." "Then why Cabin 7? My mother started crying harder. "Because I panicked." "That isn't an answer. You have to understand what was happening then." "I don't have to understand anything. I need facts." Eleanor spoke. "The hospital wanted to keep Natalie under observation." "Yes," my mother said. "But you removed her." "Yes." "Why?" My mother looked at Eric. "Because of the blood test." "What blood test?" My mother didn't answer. Eleanor did. "The prenatal screening." I stared at the phone. "What did it show?" Silence. Then my mother whispered that there might be something wrong with the baby. Noah's face changed. What was wrong with me? My mother immediately turned toward him. "Nothing." "Then why did you say that?" "Because the test was wrong." "What test?" She looked trapped. I said, "Tell us." My mother took a long breath. "The initial screening suggested a chromosomal abnormality." Noah looked down. "What kind?" "It doesn't matter because you don't have it. It mattered enough for you to hide me." My mother flinched. "Noah, that's not—" "Then what happened?" She couldn't answer. Eleanor took over. "Margaret believed the baby might need lifelong medical care." My stomach turned. "Mom, I was scared." "Of a screening result? You were 24. You and Eric were barely paying your mortgage. You'd just been in an accident." "So?" "I thought your life was falling apart. And you decided what?" "I didn't decide anything at first." Eleanor interrupted. "Yes, you did." My mother stared at the phone. "What did she decide?" Eleanor's voice became quieter. "She asked me if I knew somewhere Natalie could recover without questions." "And you brought me to the camp." "Yes." "Why was Cabin 7 empty?" "It wasn't being used that summer because of mold repairs. The work had been delayed." "So there was no private medical program?" "No." I remembered what Rebecca at the camp had said. "Then why does the camp think there was?" "Because Margaret paid the camp director to list it that way." My mother whispered, "I wanted privacy." "For what?" She looked at Noah again. And suddenly I knew. "No." My mother started crying. "I'm sorry." "No." "Natalie, you took me there to have the baby?" "Not intentionally. You just said I was 7 months pregnant. We thought you'd recover for a few days." "We?" "Me and Eleanor." Eleanor immediately said, "I agreed to watch you for 1 night, nothing more." "What happened?" Eleanor's voice shook.
Your labor started on August 17th. I looked at the photograph. August 18th. You delivered him there? Yes. In a summer camp cabin? It happened too quickly to move you safely. I felt sick. Was there a doctor? No. A midwife? No. Just you? Yes. And my mother? Yes. I looked at Noah. He had gone completely still. What time was he born? Just after midnight. August 18th? Yes. Was he premature? About 9 weeks. How did he survive? He was small, but he was breathing well. I called someone I trusted. Who? A pediatric nurse. Did she come? Yes. Why not call an ambulance? Eleanor went silent. I already knew the answer. My mother wouldn't let you. Yes. I looked at Margaret. You risked my baby's life to keep this secret? I was trying to protect you. There's that word again. Natalie. From what? She couldn't answer. From being a mother to a child who might have a disability? No. Then what? From losing Eric. Eric stood. What? My mother looked at him. You were already talking about leaving. His face changed. I turned toward him. What is she talking about? Eric looked genuinely confused. I wasn't. She told me you were. Who? My mother froze. I stared at her. Who told you? She looked away. Mom. A woman called me. What woman? She said she worked with Eric. I looked at my husband. He shook his head. This is insane. What did she say? My mother answered that Eric had been having an affair. My stomach dropped. Eric stepped forward. I never had an affair. I know that now. Now? Yes. You thought I was cheating on Natalie, so you hid our child? No, it wasn't just that. Then what? My mother covered her face. The story was becoming more complicated, but for the first time, I realized something important. My mother hadn't created the situation by herself. Someone had been feeding her information, pregnancy fears, a supposed affair, financial problems. Someone had wanted her frightened. But why? I turned to Eleanor. What happened after Noah was born? There was a long pause. Margaret asked me to take a photograph. The one Sophie brought home? Yes. Why? She said Natalie should have proof one day. I stared at my mother. You wanted proof? I wasn't planning to hide him forever. How long? She looked at me. I thought a few days. Then what happened? Eleanor answered. Your labor started the next morning. I closed my eyes. Was I holding him? Yes. Did I know he was mine? Yes. That hurt. Somewhere inside my damaged memory was a moment when I knew this boy. What did I say? Eleanor began crying again. You asked if he was okay. I looked at Noah. You asked to hold him. My eyes filled. You held him for almost an hour. The photograph suddenly felt heavier in my hand. And then? Your mother told you the doctors had been wrong about the test. So he was healthy. Yes. What did I want to do? Go home. With Noah? Yes. My mother made a small sound. I turned toward her. What? She was crying so hard she could barely speak. You wanted to call Eric. Of course I did. You kept asking for him. Then why didn't I? Because you collapsed. What? Your bleeding started again. Eleanor continued. You lost consciousness. Did you call an ambulance then? Yes. Where did they take me? Back to St. Matthew's. And Noah? Silence. Where was my baby? My mother looked at the floor. Not with you. Why? The ambulance crew didn't know he'd been born. I stared at her. You didn't tell them? No. My voice came out as a whisper. Where did you take him? My mother looked toward Noah. To someone I thought I could trust. Noah's jaw tightened. My parents. My mother nodded.
I looked between them. What parents? Noah answered. David and Laura Mercer. The names meant nothing to me. Who were they? My adoptive parents. Where are they now? My dad died when I was 8. And Laura? He looked at my mother. That's why I'm here. My heart began pounding. What happened to her? She died 3 weeks ago. The room went quiet. I'm sorry. Noah nodded. She had cancer. How did you find my mother? Laura left me a letter. What did it say? He reached into his backpack. He pulled out a folded envelope. On the front was his name. Inside were several pages. He handed them to me. The first paragraph was enough. Noah, there's something I should have told you years ago. You were never legally adopted by us. I looked up. What? Noah nodded. There was no adoption. My mother whispered. I didn't know that. Noah ignored her. Laura said they were supposed to care for me temporarily.
For how long? Until you recovered. My chest tightened. Then why didn't they return you? Because someone told them you died. I stopped breathing. What? Noah handed me the second page. 3 days after we took you home, a woman called and told us Natalie had died from complications after the accident. She said the family did not want contact and that we should raise you as our own. I read it twice. Then I looked at my mother. Did you tell them I died? No. Eleanor? No. Eric stepped closer. Who made the call? Noah pointed lower on the page. Laura had written one more detail. I recognized the woman's voice years later when I heard her speak at Margaret's retirement party. My hands started trembling. My mother stared at the letter. What retirement party? Yours. That was 5 years ago. Noah nodded. Laura was there. My mother looked confused. Who did she recognize? Noah took the letter back. His voice became quieter. He wrote the name. Whose name? He looked at Eric, then at me. Someone named Diane Brooks. Eric went completely still. I knew the name. Everyone in our family knew the name. Diane Brooks was Eric's mother, my in-law, and she had died 6 months earlier. Eric sat down. No. Noah handed him the letter. He read it, then read it again. My mother didn't know about the pregnancy. My mother looked at him. Yes, she did. Eric raised his head. What? She visited me at St. Matthew's. When? The morning after the accident. Did you ever tell me that? She asked to see Natalie. Did she? No, Natalie was asleep. What did my mother want? Margaret looked frightened. She wanted to know whether the baby was yours. I stared at Eric. He looked just as shocked as I was. Why would she ask that? My mother slowly shook her head. I never understood that either. Eric stared at the floor. Then something changed in his expression. A memory. What? He didn't answer. Eric. My mother had a key. To what? Our old apartment. So? She went there while I was traveling. When? August 2011. My heart started pounding. How do you know? Because when I came back, some things were missing. What things? Your medical papers. What medical papers? The paperwork from St. Matthew's. I stared at him. You had them? They gave me copies after the accident. And Diane took them? I thought we'd misplaced them. Noah spoke quietly. There's more. He removed another object from his backpack, a small digital voice recorder. My mom left this too. Laura? He nodded. She said if I ever found Natalie, I should give it to her. What's on it? I haven't listened to all of it. Why? Because the first recording scared me. He placed it on the kitchen table. There were several audio files. The oldest was dated August 21st, 2011, 3 days after Noah was born. Noah pressed play. A woman's voice filled the room. I didn't recognize it. It was Laura. Diane, I don't understand. Margaret said this was temporary. Then another voice answered. Older, calm, cold. Eric closed his eyes. It was his mother.
Margaret doesn't make the decisions anymore. Laura said something I couldn't hear clearly. Then Diane's voice returned. Natalie won't remember enough to come looking for him. My skin turned cold. Then Laura asked the question that changed the entire story. Why are you doing this? There was a pause, and Diane answered, because that boy can never be allowed to meet Eric. Eric looked at me. I looked at Noah. And for the first time since he walked into my house, I realized we had all been asking the wrong question. Not why my mother hid my pregnancy, not why Noah wasn't returned, but why Eric's mother had been so determined to keep Noah away from her own son.
The reason Diane hid Noah. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The recorder sat on the kitchen table between us. Diane's final words seemed to remain in the room even after the recording stopped. That boy can never be allowed to meet Eric. Eric reached for the recorder. Play it again. Noah did. Laura's voice came first, then Diane's. Same words, same calm delivery. Eric shook his head. I don't understand. I watched him carefully. Did your mother know something about you? Like what? I don't know. She was controlling Natalie. She wasn't insane. My mother gave a humorless laugh. You didn't know her as well as you think. Eric looked at her. What does that mean? Margaret hesitated. I was done with hesitation. Mom, she lowered her eyes. Diane and I had an argument after Noah was born. When? About a week later. You knew she was involved? I suspected. Why? Because she knew things she shouldn't have known. What things? That you had delivered. My chest tightened. You told her? No. Eleanor? No. Then how? I never found out. Eric picked up the recorder. Maybe this has more. Noah nodded. There are 7 files. Have you heard them? Only the first 2. Why only 2? Noah looked down. Because the second one was about me. I moved closer. What did it say? Instead of answering, he pressed the next file. The date was August 23, 2011. Laura's voice was quieter this time. Diane, he needs a doctor. He's premature. Diane answered, take him to Dr. Warren. He'll ask questions. He won't. Laura sounded angry. This isn't what David and I agreed to. Then Diane said something strange. You wanted a child, now you have one. Laura answered immediately. Not like this. A pause. Then, and what happens when Natalie remembers? Diane's response was immediate. She won't. My stomach turned. Eric stopped the recording. What did she mean? Eleanor was still connected through my phone. She answered quietly. The neurologist warned Margaret that some memories surrounding the accident might never return. My mother nodded. You had post-traumatic amnesia. I stared at her. And Diane knew? Yes. How? She spoke to one of your doctors. Eric looked furious. She wasn't even Natalie's emergency contact. No. Then why was anyone giving her information? They shouldn't have. I rubbed my forehead. For 15 years, I'd believed the blank space after my accident was simply part of the concussion. Now I understood that people had built an entire lie inside that blank space. But Diane's motives still didn't make sense. I looked at Noah. What else did Laura leave you? A box. Where? At home. What's in it? Documents, some pictures, letters. Can we see them? He nodded. My house is about 40 minutes away. Eric stood. Then let's go. My mother started to rise. I stopped her. No. Natalie, you stay here with Sophie. I should come. You've hidden enough from me. Her face fell. Please. No. I picked up the photograph and recorder. Eric, we're going with Noah. Noah lived in a small blue house near the edge of town. I spent the entire drive staring at him through the rearview mirror. Every few minutes I caught another detail. The way he scratched his eyebrow when thinking. Eric did that. The way he tapped 2 fingers against his knee. Eric did that. 2. That should have reassured me. Instead, Diane's words kept repeating in my head. That boy can never be allowed to meet Eric. When we reached the house, Noah unlocked the door. The place still looked lived in. A pair of women's shoes sat beside the entrance. A mug remained on the kitchen counter. There were pictures everywhere.
Noah as a toddler, Noah missing his front teeth, Noah holding a baseball trophy, Noah beside Laura and David. I stopped at one. He was about 5. Laura was kneeling beside him. David had his hand on Noah's shoulder. They looked happy. That was difficult to see. These people had kept my son, but they'd also loved him. Noah noticed me staring. They were good parents. I looked at him. I believe you. My mom wanted to tell me. Laura? Yes. She kept saying she would when I was older. Did David know? Everything. Why didn't he return it? Noah looked uncomfortable. I don't know. Then he led us upstairs. Laura's bedroom had barely been touched since her death. Noah opened the closet and removed a gray storage box. He put it on the bed. Written across the top were 2 words, "For Noah." Inside were folders, medical records, receipts, photographs, and envelopes. Eric picked up one document. This is from St. Matthew's. I looked. My name was at the top. Natalie Brooks, emergency treatment, August 11th, 2011. Someone had highlighted several lines. Pregnancy estimated at 30 weeks, 4 days.
I stared at it. There it was. Proof. I had been pregnant. Noah was real. The blank part of my life wasn't imaginary. I turned the page. A note had been handwritten near the bottom. Patient repeatedly asks whether husband has been contacted. Mother requests delay. I looked at Eric. You weren't contacted? Not until the next morning. Who called you? Your mother. I took out my phone. Margaret answered. Mom, why did you wait until the next day to tell Eric about my accident? Silence. Natalie? Answer. Diane told me he was with another woman. Eric shook his head. I was at a conference. I know that now. I closed my eyes. Mom, you believed my mother-in-law over my husband? I was scared. You keep saying that. I know. I hung up. I couldn't hear another explanation yet. Noah pulled out another envelope. This one has Eric's name. Eric froze. Mine? The envelope was sealed. Noah handed it to him. Mom said I should give it to you if I ever found you. Eric opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter from Laura. He read silently. Then his face changed. What? He handed it to me. The letter was dated 4 months before Laura died. I read, Eric, if Noah finds you, there is something you need to know before you decide who to blame. Diane did not take Noah because she hated Natalie. She took him because she believed a DNA test would expose what she had hidden from you your entire life. I stopped. What DNA test? Eric stared at me. I don't know. I continued. When Noah was 3 weeks old, Diane brought a doctor to our house and demanded a blood sample from Noah. I refused at first. She threatened to report us for kidnapping. David finally agreed. 2 weeks later, Diane returned with the results. She was terrified. Below that, Laura had written, the test confirmed what Diane feared, but she hadn't written what it was. Eric grabbed the next page. There wasn't one. That's it? Noah nodded. That's all that was in the envelope. Eric looked furious. Where's the test? Noah reached deeper into the box. I think this. He pulled out a faded laboratory envelope. The seal had already been broken. Eric took it. Inside was a single-page report. I moved beside him. The test was old. The language was technical, but one section was clear. Tested child, Noah Mercer. Then several genetic markers. And near the bottom, paternal relationship analysis. Eric's name wasn't listed. Instead, there was a code. Subject EB1. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. I felt the floor disappear beneath me. Eric read it again. No. Noah looked from him to me. What does that mean? Nobody answered. His voice became louder. What does it mean? I could barely speak. It says Eric isn't your biological father. Noah stepped backward. Eric looked at me. I saw the question immediately. Natalie! No. I didn't say anything. You were going to. I know you wouldn't. I never cheated on you. I believe you.
Then the test is wrong. It could be. Noah stared at me. Then who is my father? I don't know. And that was the truth, at least consciously. But something had started happening inside my head. A memory, not complete, just fragments. A hospital hallway, someone arguing, a man's voice, my mother crying, and Diane saying, "Don't tell Eric yet." I sat on the edge of the bed. Eric crouched in front of me. What is it? I remembered something. What? A hospital hallway. We know that. No. Closed my eyes. Before the accident. Eric frowned. What? I opened my eyes. She came to see me before the accident. When? I don't know. Why? I pressed my fingers against my temples. Another fragment surfaced. A doctor's office. Diane sitting beside me. A folder. A man wearing a white coat. Then nothing. I need my medical records. Eric looked at the box. These? No. Before August. Noah started searching. Several minutes later, he found another folder. This one contained photocopies from a women's health clinic. The dates went back months. I recognized the clinic name. Hawthorne Women's Center. I went there. Eric looked at me. For what? I don't remember. Then I saw a page dated February 2011, 6 months before the accident. Patient, Natalie Brooks. Procedure, embryo transfer. Nobody moved. I read it again. Embryo transfer. Eric whispered. We never did IVF. No. We weren't even trying for a baby. I know. Noah looked confused. What does embryo transfer mean? I couldn't answer. Eric took the document. This has to be fake. But the signature at the bottom looked like mine. My handwriting. My name. I flipped through the pages. Consent forms, medication schedules, ultrasound notes. There was even a billing statement. Paid in full. Not by me, not by Eric. The payer was listed as D. Brooks Family Trust. Diane. My mother-in-law had paid for it. Eric stared at the document. What the hell did she do? I couldn't breathe. Then I remembered something else. A winter morning, Diane driving me somewhere. Me asking why Eric couldn't know. Her saying, because it's a surprise. I closed my eyes. And suddenly a larger piece came back. I had agreed to fertility treatment, but not because Eric and I were infertile. Because Diane had told me Eric was infertile. She claimed he had undergone testing years earlier. She told me he was ashamed, that he wanted children but couldn't admit the truth. She offered to pay for treatment, and she made me promise not to tell him until I was pregnant. I opened my eyes. She lied to me. Eric stared. About what? She told me you were infertile. His face went blank. What? She said you knew. Natalie, I've never had a fertility test in my life. I know that now. Noah sat down. So whose embryo was it? That was the question. The clinic records listed donor sperm, anonymous, but something was wrong. Diane wouldn't hide Noah simply because anonymous donor sperm had been used. There had to be more. We kept searching. At the bottom of the box, beneath Laura's tax records, was another envelope. No name. Inside was a photocopy of a birth certificate. Not Noah's. Eric looked at it. This is mine. I didn't understand. Then Noah pulled out another document, a paternity report from 1984.
Eric was an infant. The listed mother was Diane Brooks. The tested man was Thomas Brooks, Eric's father. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Eric stopped breathing. My dad wasn't my father? I looked at him. Diane had hidden Eric's paternity his entire life. But how did that connect to Noah? There was one final page. Laura had handwritten a note across the top. This is why Diane was afraid. Attached was a genetic comparison. Subject EB1, Eric Brooks. Subject NM1, Noah Mercer. The conclusion read, results support a second-degree biological relationship. Eric stared at it. If I'm not his father, I whispered, You're related to him another way." Noah looked frightened. "How?" I didn't know, but Eric did. His face had gone completely white. "My dad had a brother." I looked at him. "You never told me that." "I never met him." "Why?" "He disappeared before I was born." "What was his name?" "Michael." Noah stood. "So Michael could be my father?" Eric shook his head slowly. "No." "Why not?" "Because Michael died in 1998. The room went silent again. Then Eric looked at the embryo transfer record. Unless the donor sample was stored. I felt sick. Diane had arranged the treatment. Diane had chosen the clinic. Diane had paid. And Diane had hidden Noah after he was born. I understood what we needed. Hawthorne Women's Center. Eric nodded. If they're still open. They were. The clinic had moved twice, but it still existed. I called from Noah's house. I expected privacy laws, forms, delays. Instead, the receptionist became strangely quiet when I gave her my name. "Can you hold?" 5 minutes later, a man answered. "Mrs. Brooks?" "Yes." "My name is Dr. Alan Pierce. I'm the medical director. I need records from 2011. "I understand." "How?" There was a pause. "Because we've been expecting someone from your family to contact us." My skin went cold. "For 15 years?" "No." "Then since when?" 6 months. 6 months. Diane died 6 months ago. Why? Before Diane Brooks died, she sent our office a notarized authorization allowing release of a sealed file to you. Eric and I looked at each other. What sealed file? "I can't discuss the contents by phone." "I can come today. Bring identification. We'll be there." Before he hung up, I asked, "Dr. Pierce?" "Yes." "Do you know who Noah's biological father is?" The line went quiet. Then he said, "I know whose genetic material was used." My heart hammered. "Who?" "I can't disclose that until your identity is verified." "Is it Michael Brooks?" Another silence, longer this time. "I'll see you when you arrive." We reached the clinic just before 5. Dr. Pierce met us personally. He was in his late 60s. He looked at Eric first, then Noah. His expression told me he saw the resemblance too. We sat in his office. He placed a sealed file on the desk. Diane instructed me to give this to Natalie after her death. Why not while she was alive? I asked her that. What did she say? Dr. Pierce looked uncomfortable. That she was too ashamed. I opened the file. Inside was a letter. Diane's handwriting. "Natalie, if you are reading this, then I died without finding the courage to tell you what I did." My hands trembled. I continued. Eric was raised believing Thomas Brooks was his father. He wasn't. His biological father was a man my family would never have accepted. Eric looked away. The next paragraph was worse. Years later, after Michael died, I discovered that samples he had stored during cancer treatment still existed. I stopped. Eric whispered, "Michael?" I kept reading. "Michael was not my brother." My eyes froze on the sentence. Eric leaned closer. "What?" I read the next line. "He was Eric's biological father." Nobody moved. Eric stared at the page. His mother's supposed brother had actually been his father. That explained the old paternity test. It explained the secrecy. But it created something even darker, because Diane had used Michael's stored genetic material for my fertility treatment. I looked at Dr. Pierce. No. His face told me the answer. "I'm sorry." I turned back to the letter. I convinced myself I was giving Eric something that belonged to him, a child carrying the blood of the father he never knew. I felt nauseated. I told Natalie the donor was anonymous. I falsified the authorization regarding the donor selection.
Natalie did not know. Eric stood so suddenly his chair hit the wall. She used my father's sperm? Dr. Pierce nodded. According to the archived records. Noah looked completely lost. So he couldn't finish. I could. If Michael was Eric's biological father, Eric looked at Noah, and Noah's genetic material created Noah, his voice broke, then Noah isn't biologically my son. I finished the sentence. Your half-brother. Silence. Noah stared at Eric. Eric stared back. And suddenly Diane's words from the recording made perfect, horrifying sense. That boy can never be allowed to meet Eric. Because if Noah ever met Eric, if anyone ever ran the right DNA test, Diane's oldest secret would be exposed. Not only that she'd stolen my child from me, but that she'd secretly used Michael's genetic material to create him. I looked at Dr. Pierce. There were 2 embryos transferred. He nodded. My heart stopped. What? Eric turned. 2? Dr. Pierce looked at the records. Yes. Did both implant? The early scans suggested so. My mouth dried. I was carrying twins? Initially. Noah stared at me. I gripped the desk. What happened to the other baby? Dr. Pierce slowly closed the file. That is the part Diane never explained. I leaned forward. Then you explain it. He looked directly at me. The hospital record after your accident listed only 1 fetus. I couldn't breathe. So sometime between your first ultrasound and the accident, he paused, one of the babies disappeared from your medical record.
The second baby. I stared at Dr. Pierce. One of the babies disappeared from my medical record? He nodded. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. Your first ultrasound after the embryo transfer showed 2 gestational sacs, 2 developing embryos. And after the accident, St. Matthew's records mention only 1 pregnancy. I looked at Noah. 1 baby had become a 15-year-old boy standing beside me. But there had been another. What happened to the second baby? I don't know. That isn't good enough. Natalie, I wasn't treating you after the accident. But you have the fertility records. Yes. Then show me everything. Dr. Pierce hesitated. I leaned across his desk. I have spent 15 years not knowing I gave birth to a child. I found out because my daughter came home from summer camp carrying a photograph of me holding him. I am finished accepting partial answers. He nodded. Then he opened the sealed file again. There were ultrasound reports, medication logs, embryology notes. 2 embryos had been transferred. Both had implanted. At 8 weeks, 2 heartbeats were recorded. At 12 weeks, 2. At 16 weeks, 2. At 20 weeks, 2. The last record from Hawthorne was dated July 29, 2011, less than 2 weeks before my accident. Antelope A, normal cardiac activity. Antelope B, normal cardiac activity. I looked at Eric. There were definitely 2. Yes. Noah whispered. So I have a twin? I couldn't answer. Dr. Pierce said carefully, not necessarily. I looked at him. What does that mean? Pregnancies can change. There could have been a fetal loss between July 29th and the accident. Wouldn't I know? Not always. But there would be a record. If you were examined afterward, yes. And there isn't? Not in the records I have. I stood. Then we need St. Matthew's records. The hospital closed. Records don't disappear because a building closes. No. Who has them? Dr. Pierce wrote down the name of a medical archive company. Before we left, he gave me a copy of Diane's entire letter. I read the rest in the car. Most of it was apology. She admitted lying about Eric's fertility. She admitted arranging my treatment without telling him.
She admitted using Michael's stored genetic material without my informed consent. She admitted helping keep Noah away from us after my accident. But there was one sentence near the end that I read 4 times. I told myself I was saving one child after I had already failed the other. One child, the other. I handed the letter to Eric. "Read that." He did. His expression changed. She knew. Knew what? Whatever happened to the second baby. We returned home after 8. My mother was waiting. Sophie was sitting beside her. The moment Sophie saw Noah, she stood. So, I didn't know where to begin. How do you explain something like this to a 13-year-old? This boy wasn't simply her brother. Genetically, because Michael was both Noah's biological father and Eric's biological father, Noah was Eric's paternal half-brother. Family trees aren't designed for secrets like ours. I kept it simple. The photograph was real. Sophie looked at Noah. "He's the baby?" "Yes." Her eyes widened. "So he's my brother?" I looked at Eric, then Noah. "Yes." That was the relationship that mattered. Sophie walked toward him. Noah looked terrified. She stopped in front of him. "That's weird." For the first time all day, Noah smiled. "Yeah. Do you like horror movies?" "What?" "Because Mom doesn't let me watch the good ones." Despite everything, I laughed. So did Eric. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but we needed those 3 seconds. Then I turned to my mother. "We need to talk." She saw Diane's letter in my hand. Her face changed. "Where did you get that?" "Hawthorne." She sat down. "Did you know I was carrying twins?" "Not at first." "When did you find out?" "After the accident." "Did you know I was carrying twins?" "Yes." "Both?" My mother looked confused. "What do you mean?" "There were 2 viable fetuses less than 2 weeks before the accident."
Her face went blank. "No. You knew I was pregnant?" "Yes. But not with twins?" "No." I watched her carefully. She wasn't acting. At least, I didn't think she was. "Diane knew." My mother looked toward the letter. "How?" "I don't know." Then I remembered something. "Mom, when you took me to cabin 7, did Eleanor examine me?" "Yes." "Did she know I was carrying twins?" "No." "How could she not? We didn't have your full records." "What did St. Matthew's tell you?" "That you were pregnant with a boy." "One boy?" "Yes." "Did anyone perform an ultrasound at the camp?" "No." "What about after Noah was born?" "Eleanor had said I started bleeding. The ambulance took me back to St. Matthew's." "What happened when I returned to the hospital?" My mother looked uncomfortable. "You were unconscious." "I know." "What did the doctors say?" "That you'd had a premature delivery." "Did anyone mention another baby?" "No." I sat down. Somewhere between July 29th and August 11th, one baby had vanished from the story, and Diane apparently knew why. The medical archive company returned my call the next morning. They had records from St. Matthew's, but retrieving 15-year-old files required written authorization. I submitted everything. They told me it could take several days. Detective work would have been easier if Diane were alive, but she wasn't. So we did the next best thing. We went through her house. Eric was executor of her estate. Most of her belongings were still there. We spent hours opening drawers, boxes, filing cabinets. Nothing. Then Sophie found the key. Of course she did. She was sitting on the floor of Diane's bedroom going through an old jewelry box. "Dad." Eric looked over. "This key says B214. It was a small silver key attached to a plastic tag. North County Storage, B214. Eric frowned. I didn't know she had a storage unit. Neither did I. We drove there that afternoon. The account was still active. Eric had the estate paperwork. The manager let us in. Unit B214 was small.
Inside were maybe 12 boxes, an old chair, 2 suitcases, Christmas decorations. Nothing dramatic, until Noah noticed a plastic container at the back. Unlike everything else, it had a combination lock. Eric tried Diane's birthday. Nothing. Then his own. Click. The lid opened. Inside were medical records, photographs, and a stack of letters tied with a ribbon. On top was an envelope labeled, "Natalie, if Noah finds you." My hands shook as I opened it. Diane had written another confession. This one was much shorter. "Natalie, if Noah has found you, then probably Eleanor gave you the photograph. I asked her to destroy it. She refused. I am grateful now that she did." I continued. "There is something you deserve to know about the accident." I stopped. Eric leaned closer. It was not random. My skin turned cold. I kept reading. "You were driving to Hawthorne that morning because the clinic had called you about a discrepancy in your pregnancy records." I looked at Eric. "I don't remember that." Keep reading. "Someone had changed the donor identification attached to one of the embryos. The clinic wanted you to return for testing." One of the embryos, not both. I felt nauseated. "I was afraid the testing would expose what I had done, so I followed you." My hands began trembling harder. "I tried to stop you before you reached the clinic." The next sentence was almost impossible to read. "I caused the accident." Eric whispered, "No." I kept reading. "I did not intend to hurt you. I pulled alongside your car and tried to force you to stop. You swerved." I remembered headlights, a horn, a dark vehicle beside me, then the guardrail. For 15 years I'd remembered the crash as fragments. Now one fragment had a face behind it. Diane. Eric walked away from the box. He put both hands against the storage unit wall. "My mother caused your accident." Yes, but there was more. When I reached St. Matthew's, I learned something I had not expected. There were 2 babies. I froze. Diane hadn't known about the twins before the accident, so her line about failing one child referred to something that happened afterwards. I continued. "One embryo was created using Michael's stored sample. The other was not."
My mouth went dry. Eric turned back. "What?" "2 embryos. 2 biological fathers." I read on. "The clinic had made an error during preparation. The second embryo belonged to another patient." Nobody spoke. Noah whispered, "So my twin wasn't really my twin. Biologically," I struggled to process it, "you shared the pregnancy, but the other baby may not have been genetically related to us." That was the discrepancy Hawthorne had called about. One embryo was intended for me, the other had been transferred by mistake. Diane's letter continued. "The other patient's name was Rebecca Lane." I stopped. Rebecca, the woman who answered my call at Pine Ridge, the current camp administrator? My heart began pounding. No, it had to be coincidence. But there was another sentence. Rebecca was told her embryo had failed to develop. It hadn't. Natalie was carrying her child. I sat down on one of the boxes. The entire story shifted again. Diane had caused the accident to hide her own fertility deception, but the accident exposed a completely separate clinic error. I kept reading. When Natalie was admitted, I contacted Rebecca. I told her the truth. "Why?" Eric whispered. The letter answered. "I believed the second baby belonged to her and should be returned to her." Then, I convinced a physician at St. Matthew's to separate the records. My stomach turned. That was why the hospital file showed only one fetus. Diane had arranged for one baby to disappear from my chart before I ever reached cabin 7. "Where did the other baby go?" Noah asked. I read the final paragraph. Rebecca took her child on August 12th. August 12th, 6 days before Noah was born. That didn't make sense. I looked at Eric. How could she take a baby before I delivered? He understood immediately. She didn't. We kept searching the container. At the bottom was an operative report. I read the heading, Emergency Fetal Procedure, August 12, 2011. Dr. Pierce had been right that something major was missing. The second pregnancy had developed a severe complication after the accident. Doctors performed an emergency procedure, but the language didn't describe a delivery. It described fetal intervention and transfer to another facility. That sounded medically strange enough that I didn't trust our interpretation. We needed the actual records. Then my phone rang. The archive company. They had located my St. Matthew's file, and there was a problem. Several pages had been removed, but the archive had microfilm backups. They could send them securely that afternoon. When they arrived, one page answered almost everything. The second fetus had not been removed alive. The medical terminology was complicated, but the conclusion was clear. The second fetus had died from injuries associated with placental separation after the accident. There had never been a second surviving child. Diane's confession had made it sound as if Rebecca took her child. What Rebecca had actually received were the remains and the right to arrange a private burial. I sat staring at the screen. So there wasn't another teenager somewhere. There wasn't another child to find. There was a baby who never got that chance. And the accident Diane caused had contributed to her death. That was what Diane meant. I was saving one child after I had already failed the other. Noah survived. The other baby didn't. There was one thing I still needed to understand. Rebecca. I called Pine Ridge. She answered. Pine Ridge? Rebecca? It's Natalie Brooks. Silence. Then, you know? Yes. She started crying. I wondered if you would eventually find out. Why didn't you tell me when I called? I didn't know how much Eleanor had told you. Were you the other patient at Hawthorne? Yes. Was it your embryo? Yes. Her voice broke. My husband and I had been trying for 8 years. I closed my eyes. They told you it failed. Yes. And Diane contacted you after my accident. She said the clinic had made a mistake. Why didn't you come to me? I wanted to, but Diane told me you were unconscious and that your family didn't know about the clinic. That part was true. What happened to the baby? Rebecca cried harder. The doctors told me she couldn't survive. She? Yes. A girl. What did you do? I held her after she died. My eyes filled. Rebecca continued. I named her Hope. Hope. The daughter who wasn't genetically mine, but had grown inside me for months. The child whose heartbeat had shared space with Noah's. Where is she? Rebecca told me. A small cemetery less than 10 miles from Pine Ridge. I understood then why she had gone quiet when I asked about Cabin 7, why Eleanor had returned, why all of this had converged at the camp. The secret had never really left that place. 2 weeks later, we went to Hope's grave. Me, Eric, Sophie, Noah. Rebecca met us there. It was the first time we'd ever seen each other. She hugged me. I didn't expect that. Neither of us spoke for a while. The headstone was small. Hope Lane, 2011, loved before we knew her. I touched the stone. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. She wasn't genetically my daughter, but I had carried her. My body had protected her, and somewhere inside the part of my memory that never returned, I may have known there were 2 heartbeats. Rebecca knelt beside me. I'm sorry. I looked at her. For what? For not finding you. You were lied to too. That was the strange thing about our story. There wasn't one simple betrayal. There were people making decisions for other people because they believed they knew what was best. My mother hid my pregnancy because she thought she was protecting me. Eleanor helped because she thought she was protecting my mother. Laura kept Noah because she was told I was dead. And Diane manipulated everyone. She lied to me about my husband. She arranged a fertility procedure without his knowledge. She used genetic material I had never consented to. She caused the accident trying to stop the truth from coming out. Then she spent 15 years hiding the consequences. Fear had started the secret. Shame had kept it alive.
Noah didn't move into our house immediately. He had a home, a school, friends, a life. And he had just lost the woman he called Mom. I wasn't going to respond to losing 15 years by taking more choices away from him. We started slowly, dinner twice a week, then weekends. Sophie texted him constantly. Within a month, they were arguing like siblings. That made me happier than it probably should have. Eric struggled differently. Technically, Noah was his paternal half-brother. Emotionally, that wasn't how Eric saw him. One night, Noah asked, "What am I supposed to call you?" Eric thought for a moment. "Eric is fine." Noah smiled. "Good. Dad would have been weird." Eric laughed. Then Noah added, "But you're still family." Eric's eyes filled. "Yeah, I am." 3 months after Sophie came home from camp, we returned to Pine Ridge. Eleanor was waiting beside cabin 7. She looked older than Sophie had described. She held an envelope. "The original," she said. Inside was the photograph, not a copy. Me at 24, sitting on the cabin steps, holding newborn Noah. On the back, August 18th, 2011. You held him. I looked at Eleanor. "Why did you keep this?" "Because everyone was trying to erase what happened." "Why give it to Sophie?" "Because Laura had died." I frowned. "What does Laura have to do with you?" "She contacted me before she died." "When?" "About 2 months earlier." "What did she say?" "That Noah had started asking questions." "So you planned this?" "No. I came to the camp because Rebecca told me she was finally ready to reopen the old records. Then I saw Sophie." Eleanor smiled sadly. "She looked so much like you did at 13 that I knew immediately." "You knew she was my daughter?" "Yes." "And you gave her the photograph?" "Yes." "Why not call me?" "Because I'd tried once." I froze. "When?" 2013. "What happened?" Diane answered. My stomach tightened. "She told me never to contact you again." "And you listened?" "For too long." She looked toward the cabin. "I'm sorry." I believed her. I wasn't ready to forgive everyone, but I believed her. That evening, Sophie and Noah sat on the dock. Eric was skipping stones across the lake. I stood outside cabin 7, holding the photograph that had returned 15 missing years to me. For most of my life, I thought memory was what made something real. If I couldn't remember it, I assumed it hadn't happened. Now I knew better. I couldn't remember carrying Noah, but there I was in the photograph. I couldn't remember being pregnant, but my body had carried 2 babies. I couldn't remember asking for Eric after the accident, but the hospital records said I had. And I couldn't remember holding my newborn son for that 1 hour in cabin 7, but someone else remembered for me. Someone kept the proof. That's why I still have the photograph. Not because I need evidence anymore. Noah is evidence enough. I keep it because of what happened a few weeks after we found each other. He came over for dinner. Before leaving, he handed me a small frame. Inside was a copy of that old photograph, but beside it he'd placed a new one. The 2 of us standing outside cabin 7, 15 years apart. In the first photograph, I was holding him. In the second, he was taller than me. On the back, Noah had written, "You held me then, you found me now." I cried when I read it. He pretended not to notice. Sophie absolutely noticed and took a picture of me crying because she's 13, and apparently that's what daughters do. Our family isn't simple. Maybe it never will be. Noah has a mother he lost, a biological mother he only recently found, a biological father who died years before he was conceived,
and a man he thought would be his father who turned out genetically to be his half-brother. You couldn't draw our family tree without explaining it, but I've stopped caring whether it looks normal. What matters is that nobody is hidden anymore. Not Noah, not Hope, not the truth about Eric, and not the week of my life that everyone assumed I'd never remember. It all started because my daughter went to summer camp and came home carrying a photograph of a baby I didn't know I had had. She asked me one simple question: "Mom, who's the baby?" Now I can finally answer her. His name is Noah. He's my son, and for 15 years he was the missing piece of a life I didn't even know had been taken from me.